to the first meeting of the Montecito Planning Commission in Montecito. Tonight is a historic event, not because of what's happening in Washington, but because of what's happening here, or maybe because of both. So I want to welcome and thank you for joining us tonight in this experiment. Hopefully this is the first time we've done it, but it hopefully will not be the last. As is tradition and appropriate at our meetings, we first rise together and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, now we'll have our TV coverage announcement.
Thank you, Chair Newman, and good evening to everyone. The special hearing of December 12, 2019 will be televised live on the County of Santa Barbara Television, CSB TV Channel 20, in the South Coast, Lompoc, San Ynez Valley, San Maria, and Orchid areas. Rebroadcast of this special hearing will be on Sunday, December 15, 2019 at 5 p.m. on CSB TV Channel 20. Today's hearing will also be streamed live on the county's website and the county's YouTube channel and will be available for download in a day or two. And now for the roll call. Commissioner Keller.
Here.
Commissioner Kupiec.
Here.
Commissioner Senauer.
Here.
Commissioner Police.
Here.
And Chair Newman.
Here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. As we always do, we start our meetings with public comment from those of you who have come tonight. Again, thank you. We are pleased to hear from you about anything that is not on our agenda. If you'd care to address us on any topic of interest or concern that isn't on the agenda, now is the time for you to speak. There will be opportunities later, of course, as well, but we do this up front, so we hear from the public if there's any comment. Do anybody have any comment they'd like to make? All right, hearing none. Let's go, and we're going to first hear from our first district supervisor, Doss Williams, who has appointed all of us and been supportive of our Montecito Planning Commission efforts. And I want to thank pardon me, Supervisor Williams in particular for supporting us in this effort to have this meeting tonight.
Well, I want to thank my Montecito Planning Commissioners as well as especially our chair. I think this is a great vision and desire to bring the Planning Commission and its functions closer to the public. And you are a key partner with the county board and with community institutions on rebuilding and further resilience. Some of the subject matter tonight is going to be real, I hope, interesting for those of folks watching on TV or those folks who are here. There are many, many players, and it's become a real cooperative effort to rebuild Montecito and to increase the resiliency of the community. And I think, as you have seen in this town in the last 2 years, that in the midst of tragedy, the mountain came down and the fences were ripped apart, and in many cases our homes were ripped apart, but so were some of the barriers between us. And there is an amazing group of folks, everybody from our fire district, headed by Chief Kevin Taylor, our Office of Emergency Management, it's a county function, our flood control, our planners, who have worked really diligently to try to beat some insurance deadlines for many applicants. Our partners in community renewal, who are here tonight, and our Partnership for Resilient Communities, I'm sure are watching on television. They have been crucial part of increasing our safety. And of course, everybody who's given their time and in many cases their sweat and in some cases their blood to help us dig our way out and rebuild. And that includes the Bucket Brigade, Montecito Trails, the Community Foundation, our M4 churches, and the time that is put in by our MA community members, so our Montecito Association community members. So I want to insert a real reminder today to anybody watching on TV. Hopefully we'll repeat this several times tonight, but anyone who is seeking to rebuild and who wishes to do so under the like for like, we want them to be filling out an extension before the 9th of the month. So if you are if you're not quite there yet, we need you to do an extension. There are some in back there today. I also think that what's got us through the last 2 years, we need to continue. So part of the function and the meeting here today is to educate the public more about the functions of the Montecito Planning Commission. But part of the function of tonight is also to talk about outstanding issues in rebuilding and resilience. And I also want to thank Lisa Valencia with my staff. Many of you know her before from Salud Carbajal's staff or from the Recovery Center's staff. She first served under Salud and then in the Recovery Center. And in thinking about how best to serve Montecito, when we had an open position and the Recovery Center was closing up shop, we felt that the best way to serve you was to have that depth of experience. And so essentially she's trying to continue some of the work of the Recovery Center in the guise of my office. And so please bring issues to her that are troubleshooting issues. We are here to serve you as are our Montecito Planning Commissioners. And so again, I want to thank you guys for wanting to go above and beyond and do an additional meeting, and one that's more accessible for folks in the community rather than have it downtown during the day, have it in Montecito in the evening. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much, Supervisor Williams. And as was suggested in his opening remarks, tonight's theme for our meeting is indeed talking about the resilience of our community, to give you an update about what has happened in terms of the rebuilding process, and also just to familiarize those of you who may not have a background or experience with the functions of both our Planning and Development Department, which is represented here, as well as the Montecito Planning Commission. So the theme for tonight is resilience, is rebuilding, and we're looking forward to these positive things which have already been well underway. A couple things just to mention at the beginning. One is that tonight's meeting is different from our usual meetings. We're not going to take any action. There's nothing for us to vote upon. We're here really just to exchange information, for us to share with you a bit about what we do, how we do it, how the Planning and Development Department does what they do, and importantly, and if not more importantly, to hear from you about your concerns. And then the only other matter I want to mention is an important footnote. We are precluded, as our counsel would admonish us in the course of the evening, from talking or commenting about any pending project, any individual matter, or something that could come before us. Those are things that have to occur in the context of the hearings that are conducted when they are conducted. So with that said, we're going to start first on the agenda and discuss the Montecito Planning Commission and Planning and Development, and first hear from our staff with respect to the Montecito Community Plan. what it incorporates and so on. And to present for that topic is Tess Harris from staff.
I'm not Tess Harris, but I just want to introduce staff real quick. Chair Newman, thank you for that introduction. I want to introduce Tess Harris, who's a supervising planner with us in the Development Review Division. She spent a lot of time putting the presentation today together so that she could be informative. In addition, to her left is one of our new planners, and I want to introduce her not only to the community but also to the commission, is Willow Brown. She's just recently joined us, and you'll be seeing her as part of the recovery team, working with the case managers on the recovery building and supporting Tess Harris in that effort, as well as projects before the commission. So I wanted to take a brief moment to introduce staff, and then I'll turn it over to Ms. Harris as she begins the presentation.
As long as we're doing that, if you would you introduce yourself and your colleagues to your left?
Sure, thank you, Chair. My name is Jeff Wilson. I'm the Assistant Director for the Planning Development Department. I'm also the Montecito Planning Commission Secretary. And to my left is David Villalobos. He's the Recording Secretary. He's the man behind the myth, and he does a lot of work to make these things happen. So we want to appreciate him and his efforts. And then to his left is our representative from County Council's office, Brian Pettit.
Okay, thanks so much.
Good evening, Chair Newman, members of the Commission. I'll start out by talking about the Montecito Community Plan. So the Montecito Community Plan sets goals, policies, and actions for the Montecito community, including development standards for community facilities, community development, and resources. It designates the type of land use that's allowed for each parcel within the Montecito planning area and determines the maximum density for parcels. It also determines from that the amount of growth that can be expected in the Montecito area. Some of the specific sections of the community plan include resource constraints, so things like biology, water resources, flooding, community development such as community character, land use, housing, and public facilities and services. And so I'll now get into the Planning and Development Department's function. So we have a couple different sections in the department, including permitting and long range. So permitting includes planning, both planning and building. There are planning permits that implement the county comprehensive plan policies, the Montecito community plan policies, and goals through permitting land uses on individual parcels, so on your property. And then there are building permits that ensure that the structures are built to the building code requirements that you would get from our office as well. Our long-range planning staff is responsible for developing those goals and policies that the community follows in the comprehensive plan and the ordinances. And then they prepare revisions and updates to the comprehensive plan and to the Montecito Land Use and Development Code and other county ordinances based on the shift in time and in space. Some of the work that the Planning and Development Department is working on in terms of long-term planning is listed up on this slide, and these include the work program for the long-range planning division in our office. One of them I wanted to just quickly mention was the accessory dwelling unit one, which is right up front. So that ordinance is going to be replaced as of January 1st, 2020. There is a new state law that's being passed, and so our staff is working diligently to work on fixing our ordinance to comply with that. Then to talk about code enforcement, so Jeff and I will both do this one. There are a number of tools used to correct a non-compliance, and so with code enforcement, our office is responsible for enforcing the county ordinances and law. So if somebody calls in to provide a complaint, then our staff would go out and research, look at the property, and determine whether there in fact is a violation on the property. So some of the steps I've listed on this slide, it would include a site visit from an enforcement officer. Depending on whether there is a violation or not, there would be a written correction, and then if there is, If there is a violation, they get the written correction. They're required to comply within 30 days, and then that starts a notice of violation. They have 30 days to comply with that, and then they'll get a second notice of violation. We really try and work to fix those violations in our office, and so we want to work with the community there.
And Tess, if I could
Yes.
interject for a second. Later on in the presentation, we're going to show some slides and tools of how the community can interact with our department as well as the Montecito Planning Commission. And one of those slides are going to highlight the options of interacting with our department as far as submitting complaints to our office and how those are addressed. And Ms. Harris did an excellent job on framing our enforcement. I just wanted to, I know everybody's waiting with bated breath for later on the presentation, but we'll get to those tools that are available for the public and staff to interact with us. And just as a follow-up to what Ms. Harris was indicating, our code enforcement compliance team is made up of about, I think it's 2.5 employees that are designated to not only do enforcement countywide, but also to do permit compliance. And so the actions that the Montecito Planning Commission takes and those permits that are approved on the planning side at the staff or director level, we have staff that's designated in ensuring that those conditions of approval are implemented and the programs or projects are built the way that they are approved. And so they split between compliance and then enforcement. And so on the enforcement side, we are a complaint-based system based on all the other items that we're doing. And so we don't have specific officers that are out driving around patrolling areas looking for things. We react to complaints that come to us. So if there's an area of concern for you, then we encourage you to interact with our office, and I'll show you those tools later on and how to do that. And I think this is a good segue into the next part of the presentation, which is the history of the Montecito Planning Commission. And I believe Commissioner Keller is going to give us some information on that.
Correct. Commissioner Keller, please.
Yes, thank you. Our mics all just on and open, so we can't say anything that might be picked up, right? I just, in terms of just looking at the history, I think it's important to note that Montecito has long had a practice of self-governance and self-control of its resources and its goals. In 1927, Montecito became the first unincorporated community in the state of California to adopt a zoning ordinance. And so protecting land use and development was an early cornerstone of the community. And I understand that the remnant of this ordinance is still part of Article 2 of the Montecito, I will stand corrected if this is not right, but the Montecito Land Use Development Code, is that correct? There are still remnants of it there. But from that time on, the Montecito Association, which has long been active in the community, handled the issues of planning and development with its land use committee and its architectural review committee. And essentially, they looked at all of the proposed buildings or proposed projects. They made a decision. The land use made decisions about it, and these recommendations were passed on to the County Planning Commission, and generally it was approved because Montecitans were considered the experts as to what they wanted to have in their community. And there was a decision about 1987 that this be included in the Montecito Community Plan, which Ms. Harris has just discussed. And there was a very well-qualified and active committee headed by Joan Wells. I see some of the participants here in the audience on that development of the community plan. June Peugeot was the county staff coordinator, and the community plan was presented in 1992. Concurrently with that, there was some interest in cityhood for Montecito, having its own actual governance as a city. And in 1991, there was a vote about cityhood, and many of the candidates on the ballot was a yes or no for cityhood, along with a list of potential members of the city council. And the ballot measure failed by a handful of votes. but it should be noted that Joan Wells would have been the first mayor of Montecito if that had actually passed. So it seems fitting that she was the first chair of the Planning Commission when it was finally started. In about 2001, there was some movement to do more than just have the Montecito Association handle all the land use and development decisions in Montecito. Even though the system seemed to have been working pretty well, there was some concern that a less supportive Board of Supervisors might not be as open to the recommendations that Montecito was making, might not be as willing to support the quasi-self-governance that Montecito had achieved. And so there was a committee that was established to study possible governance modes. And one of the committees, it was headed up by George Thomas, who's a well-known and well-qualified city planner. There was a committee that looked at the status quo, a committee that looked at cityhood, and a committee that looked at area planning commission, which was an alternative model. And by a narrow vote of the Montecito Association, it was recommended to the Board of Supervisors that we adopt an area planning commission. There was a lot of interest, support, controversy, discussion, but ultimately the Board of Supervisors did approve the Area Planning Commission, which became known as the Montecito Planning Commission, and the corollary, which was the Montecito Board of Architectural Review. There were bylaws written up, and part of those bylaws were the determination that there would be no remuneration for these positions. Although we were saving the County Planning Commission a great deal of time and money by taking on the projects ourselves, there was concern that the Board of Supervisors might not approve the existence of the MPC and the MBAR if there was remuneration involved or extra expense involved. The first meeting of the Montecito Planning Commission was in March 2003. As I mentioned, Joan Wells was the chair, Bob McGrublian, Bob Burig, Michael Phillips, Dick Tilsher were all members, and later appointed were Claire Godstanker, Sue Burrows, Dan Idelson, Jack Overall, Jamie Brown, Joe Cole. So this has been a group that has been well selected, greatly committed to the community. The first terms were staggered between 2 years and 4 years so that reappointment occurs, 2 years and 1 year so that reappointment occurs every 2 years. We are nominated by the Board of nominated by our supervisor, our first district supervisor, approved by the Board of Supervisors. There is a chair, 2 vice chairs, and a total of 5 members. And we meet monthly on the 3rd Wednesday of the month. And our responsibilities are to implement the community plan and to make informed decisions about the land use questions and issues that come before us. And if there is contention or disagreement with our decisions, those decisions can be appealed to the Board of Supervisors, who then makes a separate and independent judgment on the same issues that we have subsequently decided upon. I think that's my 5 minutes.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. So some of you might want to understand a little bit more about what our specific roles are and various issues that come before us typically, and we're going to next discuss that.
So I'll briefly go over the Montecito Planning Commission bylaws. So members of the Montecito Planning Commission are appointed for 2-year terms beginning in January. Their appointments recommended by the first district supervisor, and then they're appointed by the full Board of Supervisors. They elect a chairman, a vice chairman, and a secretary. And then they as Commissioner Keller stated, they meet the 3rd Wednesday of every month. They also can hold special hearings such as this one at any date and time by motion of the chairperson, call of the chairperson, or motion of the full commission. So the role of the Montecito Planning Commission is very vast. They review and revise the comprehensive plan. They review and revise the community plan policies as well, implement the comprehensive plan through zoning, through the Montecito community plan, and through the subdivision ordinance. And then they can also review the capital improvement plan. They promote public interest in the comprehensive plan and promote coordination of plans and programs and policies with other departments and other agencies. And their main duties and functions, as stated in the Montecito Land Use and Development Code, are to review and either approve or deny. They make a determination on projects that are under their jurisdiction. They also make recommendations to the Board of Supervisors for final decisions on certain types of projects, such as comprehensive plan amendments and ordinance changes. And then they recommend action to the County Planning Commission where a property that's affected is not solely located within the Montecito Community Plan area. So the jurisdiction for the Montecito Planning Commission is the area of the county within Montecito. And that area is designated in the Montecito Community Plan. The commission is the designated planning agency for the unincorporated portion within the Montecito planning area. And then something that's worth noting is the Montecito Planning Commission assumes or takes authority over projects that would otherwise go to the zoning administrator in another portion of the county. So there are some types of projects that the Montecito Planning Commission hears that typically aren't heard through our other planning commission. So this section on the slide comes from our county ordinance from Article 5. So the County Planning Commission retains jurisdiction for some types of projects, but the Montecito Planning Commission can provide recommendations to the County Planning Commission if they're the governing body on certain types of projects and matters. And so I'll now go over connecting with the Montecito Planning Commission and the Planning and Development Department. So there's a lot of different ways that as a member of the public you can connect with our office and with the Montecito Planning Commission. You can attend a Montecito Planning Commission hearing, which are on the third Wednesdays of every month. They're typically held at the county offices at 123 East Anapamu Street. The agendas and staff reports are available prior to the hearing on our website. And then if you'd like to interact with us during a hearing or prior to a hearing, you can provide written comments that are welcome as long as the submittal deadline is Friday prior to the Wednesday hearing. Then you can also come to the hearing and you fill out a speaker slip to talk about a project or issue that has relevance to you. There's also time for public comment during all of the hearings. And then for a particular project, the Montecito Planning Commission takes action on, there is the opportunity to appeal a decision of the Montecito Planning Commission to the Board of Supervisors, and that would need to be done within 10 days of the hearing date. And so I'll now take you through the Planning and Development website. So I'll go through a few different pages of our Planning and Development Department website. So this is our homepage here. There are some quick links on the left-hand side, applications and forms. So if you're looking to apply for a certain project, you would go here. There's also our fee schedule, frequently asked questions, and then if you go to the top of our website, you can find the different policy documents that would be applicable to your site, enforcement information as well. So I'll go through a couple more. Under hearing bodies on our website, you can find the Montecito Planning Commission. And on this website, you can click here and find the agendas and staff reports for each of the Montecito Planning Commission meetings. Below are the links. You can stream a Montecito Planning Commission hearing, and you can also look at previous hearings. Okay, just to give you an idea, so there's a number of different files that you can go into and see the different agendas. Let's go. All right. We also have a page that talks about the Montecito Board of Architectural Review and provides agendas, minutes, and audio recordings for those meetings as well. And those meetings are typically held on Thursdays at 123 East Anapamu around 1 p.m. On our website, you can find a project page, and that goes through a number of different types of projects. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, for our long-range planning team, there's a full work program of a variety of projects that they work on, so they're all listed here. You can find more information about them all. And then development review and energy, minerals, and compliance have a number of projects on our website that have recently either had environmental review or been taken to hearing. This page talks about the Montecito Community Plan. So you can find a link to the community plan. You can also find links to the Montecito Architectural Guidelines and Development Standards and to the Montecito Land Use and Development Code, the Montecito Community Plan EIR. So there's a wealth of information here. And then this slide shows you, this page shows you the different codes and ordinances that we follow. So if you scroll down, you can click on a number of the different ones, whether if you're in the coastal zone, then you would follow Article 2. If you're not in the coastal zone, then you would be under the Montecito Land Use and Development Code. And then if you're subdividing property, you would fall under Chapter 21, Land Division. So just to touch on enforcement. So if you go to this tab here on our website, you can find a bunch of enforcement information. And on our website, you can find a form if you'd like to submit a complaint online. You can also print that form out and submit it in person, bring it into our counter, or you can submit a complaint by phone. So here are the phone numbers. In Santa Maria, it's 805-934-6251, and then in South County, 805-568-3558. You can also do it online. You can complete the complaint form, which is located right here.
So as Tess navigates the thing and to fill the pause, the silence, I couldn't stop. I had to talk. So the message that we're portraying tonight is that there's a number of different ways that the community can become involved, not only with the Montecito Planning Commission or within their community as it relates to planning and development. And the website is a tool, a resource to interact with our department and with the Montecito Planning Commission and with the Montecito Board of Architectural Review. It gives you a number of different ways to interact, attend meetings, provide public comment, provide written comments. If you notice issues in your community you want addressed, you can interact with us that way. Be engaged in the process when we talk about long-range planning, ordinance amendments that are going through. If they affect your community, we want to solicit feedback and information from the community as far as those items that may relate to your program or ordinance amendments. If there's projects in your neighborhood that you're interested in, there's different avenues where the public is notified of projects, and we solicit information and feedback from the community as we move through projects or long-range planning. So there's a variety of different ways that the public can interact with us. We seek input and information, same way of attending hearings with the Montecito Planning Commission and providing information and feedback to them. And I'll turn it back over to Ms. Harris.
So one other way that you can interact with our department and be aware of what's going on at the Montecito Planning Commission is to receive the agenda and projection report for Montecito Planning Commission hearings. So what will be heard at the next hearing, and then what we anticipate taking to hearing in the coming months. David, to Jeff's left, is the person that you will want to contact, and his contact information is on this slide here.
So I would just add that so there's two things you can sign up for. Our agenda list is what comes out about a week in advance of each hearing. But if you're interested in a more long-range look at what the Planning Commission is going to be working on, just consider it almost like super noticing in a way, because you'll see several months in advance sometimes what projects will be heard by the Commission, and you'll see that moving around a little bit because we do some agenda management at each meeting, but it's a good tool, and I would recommend that if you're interested in what the Montecito Planning Commission does, to contact me, or even after the meeting today, I'll sign you up.
And this slide just shows you some of the links that you can interact with the Montecito Planning Commission from as well. So if you're not at the meeting physically, you can still watch it online through these different links. And if you go to the Montecito Planning Commission page on the Planning and Development Department's website, all of these links are listed there as well.
Okay, thank you for that. I know many of you who are here and watching are interested in public works within the Montecito community. It's important for me to explain at the outset that while these are very important aspects of our community's rebuild and our infrastructure, our jurisdiction as a planning commission is virtually non-existent in this area. There are some things that we do interact with Public Works about, and in fact they have some representatives here tonight to address some questions that you might have. But I'm going to ask Commissioner Police to speak a little bit about Public Works in Montecito, even though they're not actually within our review jurisdiction.
There's a saying regarding Montecito's Public Works, and that we are the stepchild of other works that are done in the county, of course. But speaking to the Public Works Director, I don't believe that's true. I think it's shown itself by the last 2 years, the amount of effort that's gone in to reconnect us to the roads that we've been used to having for years. And I'm curious if there's questions about how you feel the conditions are presently on R192 and the access to the freeway. As you well know, we have a couple of important decisions coming up regarding the freeway and the roundabouts that are proposed, and they will be coming for us to speak about, or at least to comment and give our blessing, I guess, later this spring. Is that right, Charles?
Actually, for those of you, I'll give you a preview of coming attractions at our meeting on December 18th. Public Works is going to just present to us informationally and to the community some recent developments in connection with Public Works projects in Montecito.
One thing I would say about the roundabouts, without offering any opinion on how I feel about their success or potential for being accepted by our community, is that when you build freeways, which I did for 40 years, it's most important, if you can, to build the project's exterior or access roads first, so that while the community goes through the miserable kind of demonstration of what a construction project takes when it goes through a community as small as ours. It is important that we've had whatever enhancement we're going to have, whether you choose a roundabout or not, whether you choose different striping or different landscape that's adjacent to this freeway, that you try to get it done beforehand. And so I would really encourage us, the community, to be aware of that, because it's going to be difficult if and when this project is built, the 101. It's going to be tough. As we now know, it's not easy getting here through or passing through our community, and it was made impossible a couple of years ago, as you well know. But so I really would encourage you to pay attention to the progress and the potential development of this approval process for the roundabouts. We have some jurisdiction on the Olive Mill, but we have complete kind of comment potential for the San Isidro one. So if there's any questions about that, I think we could maybe hear a response, but it's up to our attorney.
So Chair Newman, Commissioners, we are restricted by the items that are on the agenda.
Okay.
So
Sure.
we wouldn't be able to have any discussion or dialogue on that specific
I just
project.
thought when we first started, we were saying if any questions or comments by the people that drove down here to be here, but if there's some.
Yeah, Chair Newman, we're not agendized to speak or discuss any of those items. That's
Sure.
not on the agenda.
All right, I won't argue with you.
And Chair Newman, another item of order is we are encouraged or advised to have public comment on each of the items that are listed here, which is separate from what's listed as item number 11. So if we wanted to have public comment on items under number 7 at this time, we could do that, and then we could transition into the item 8, which is the resiliency information.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you for that.
well, I've said enough then. Charles, it's up to you.
Let's go then to public comment. If any of you have any comments or thoughts you'd like to share on the Montecito Planning Commission's role, jurisdiction, and/or planning and development or concerns, now is the time for you to be heard. Anybody? Okay. If you would, we have a podium if you like, or we have a microphone. Please identify yourself by name, and then we'd be pleased to hear from you.
Good evening, Montecito Planning Commissioners, Chair. Thank you for all your hard work. My name is Doreen Lee Johnson. I'm the chair for the land use of the MA, Montecito Association. And we have strived now, our group, to really try to work with the Montecito Planning Commissioners, and we are going to be listening and looking at projects such as the roundabout. And we used to have planning commissioners come to our meetings. I think we always had 1 or 2 people come, and we'd like to actually invite you to come to our meetings as well. And we have been trying to come to your meetings now too. So we really appreciate your work, and we just want to let you know that we're looking at different projects that you're looking at, and we do look at the projection reports now, and we have, and thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. Any other comment? Please, sir, if you, why don't you go ahead and line up at the mic, or as you wish.
So
Please.
my comments are actually in the form of more of a question.
Could you identify yourself?
It's actually for the public. So my name is Claire Gottsanker. I formerly was, well, I was a member of the original group that drafted the community plan. So I've been at this for a while. And I think for the public, my question really is, oh, there you are, Jeff, is the relationship between the Planning Commission and the Montecito Association. And I'm really glad that County Council is here because it's been very difficult being a planning commissioner and also being chair of the Architectural Review Board. When I stopped being a planning commissioner, I went to back to the architectural MBAR. because I'd written the architectural, is that I keep getting called in by the county council's office for having conversations with the association, with the land use committee. And so as a community member that actually created this whole thing for the last 30 years ago, I find it really constraining that I can't talk to the Montecito Association, who was the one that started this whole thing. So if I'm as a planning commissioner, or if I'm an MBAR member, I am not allowed to have conversations with the association. And this, for me, I think, is a problem for the community as a whole, because Montecito is a very distinct community. And I think that we all came together, through this disaster and through past years, and continued to work, through the association, through the planning commission, but together as a community, not as two separate entities. And it is now, you guys can't have a conversation with them. They can invite you to listen. You're invited to be at the meeting at the back of the room, but you can't have a conversation, because that's against county council policy. And that's a problem. And so I just wanted to get that out because I had an opportunity to do so.
Thank you for that comment. Sir?
My name is Steve Nessum. We have a property here in Montecito.
Could you get closer to the mic, please?
Yeah.
So we can all
yes.
hear.
My name is Stephen Nessum. We have a property here in Montecito. We lost a home in the debris flow, and maybe a little bit tag on to the last statement / question is, I'm a little confused also between the Montecito Association, you folks here and you there, how to navigate this big project we're going to have of rebuilding and zoning and architectural, just the whole thing. I mean, who do we start talking to? And yeah, so it's just a comment.
All right, thank you for your question. Ms. Harris?
Sure, I'm happy to address that comment and question. And I'll get into it in a little bit as well. But each property that was affected by the debris flow has a case manager in our department. So somebody has been assigned to every parcel that was impacted. And that person in the planning department will take you through the process. So that's our office, yes. So if you have questions, definitely get in touch with us. I can also take your contact information down later and find your case manager. And you can find your case manager as well on our website. There's an interactive map. I'm happy to show you. Give me just one moment here. So this map is on the Planning and Development Department website. It's also on readysbc.org. So if you go to a parcel, and you click on, say this is your property, there's a number of information here, including the case manager's name and their email. So in this case, this is Alex Jimenez, and his contact info is here. Again, if you want to find your case manager and aren't able to do this, come contact me and I can help you with that.
All right, let me try to take a general approach to articulate the difference between the Planning Commission and the Montecito Association. The Montecito Association is a private corporate entity that is a 501c4 corporation. It is an advocacy group that advocates on behalf of the Montecito community. It has no governmental functions at all, but it does have meetings. They do have a land use committee that, as a matter of public interest, is open, I believe, to the public for people to attend. And they do look at projects of concern to their land use committee and to the Montecito Association. If they so choose, they weigh in by way of either coming before us on a given project and testifying orally or more frequently writing a letter with the Montecito Association's point of view on a given project or issue. But to answer your question most directly, sir, if you have a project that is individual to your property and it's something that you want to pursue, all of that activity in terms of permitting and so on occurs in the offices of Santa Barbara County's Planning and Development Department. So that's the place where you would start, that's the place where you would end up. So hopefully that explains the difference satisfactorily to everybody. Okay, any other public comments about function, roles, or so on? Please, if you come to them.
All of this paperwork, I don't see a website.
All right. Hold on. A website for what purpose, sir?
It doesn't say how to contact that, to get onto that page. There's nothing in any of these forms that show
Okay.
that website.
Here's a copy of the presentation, which I'm glad to provide you with, and there's more in the back that has the links indicated. So you can go to just Google Santa Barbara County Planning and Development, and it'll go from there. But the specific pages are shown there in a pictorial fashion on some of the slides. But we also have staff that can navigate that for you a bit after our meeting, if you'd like.
Chair Newman, if you would like, Ms. Harris can, for those that want to write down the exact website she can read that off as far as what the actual web address is.
So it's countyofsb.org backslash PLNDEV. That's backslash PLNDEV. If you can also Google search County of Santa Barbara Planning and Development. It's the first link that pops up.
Okay, any other public comment or questions?
My name is Holiday McManigal. My question I have asked of many people and I can't seem to get an answer to it. My tax base is 30 years old. I lost my home and as well as family. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to maintain a 30-year-old tax base, but what I was told is I have to rebuild within 5 years. I was told that I could petition the California Supreme Court to get an extension, and I also heard that San Diego granted extensions to people that lost property in their county. So I have asked Doss Williams' office to work on it. I'm wondering if anyone else in this room is on top of trying to maintain their tax base guaranteed to them by Prop 13. I will be darned if it's taken away. So does anyone have another answer?
If you wish, you might talk to staff privately at the end of the meeting to the extent they have any guidance or wisdom to share. I'm sure they'll do that, but I personally don't. All right, any other comments or questions regarding this portion of the agenda? Please.
My name is Letitia O'Connor. I've been a property owner in Montecito for 20 years. Just about 3 years ago, as my husband of 37 years was dying, I felt some relief at the prospect of being able to remain in my property by converting the permitted guest cottage on it as an additional dwelling unit. It had been permitted as a guest cottage, which I began to learn meant that you could only live in it 120 days per year. So I approached the Planning and Development Department in order to find out how to lift that restriction. And it was an extremely difficult process. It was really traumatic and unnecessarily so. I have actually succeeded after almost 2.5 years and $50,000 worth of work. to replace a septic tank, to widen a driveway, to do all kinds of things that may or may not have been useful. But just as I reached the end of this process, and I am a senior citizen, a widow, and my husband was also my business partner, so my income has been severely impacted by his death. I have been turned in by a vindictive neighbor who initially turned me in, not knowing that I had already been working on the ADU permit for 18 months for living illegally in my guest cottage. She then found something on the county records that was incomplete paperwork from 2003. And she's now filed a violation on that. And that has held up my being able to complete the process from my point of view. I've now completed, as I said, all the ADU requirements because I was lucky enough to have the resources to do it, even though it was really ridiculous. And now I'm being told that I cannot refinance my house. I cannot continue and complete the financial plan that I had made for myself because I now have to somehow address the fact that in 2003, we have a land use permit for garage conversion of 200 square feet into an office, which they say was never completed. So 16 years later, because of this vindictive neighbor with a violation, they come back and they tell me I have 30 days to cure that defect, which can't really be done. It's down 400 feet down a driveway. No one can see my garage. It does have one covered parking space and 3 external covered parking spaces down this 400-foot driveway. The question to me is, why do we allow vindictive neighbors to drive this process? Why don't we have why don't we give responsible government agencies the leeway to interpret something like the Montecito plan so that we are going for our values, which is the state has mandated over and over to create affordable housing. I own affordable housing. I've owned it for 20 years. I just want to live in it myself. And someone can thwart this entire process with this kind of vindictive behavior. I have gotten support from Supervisor Williams' office, and I appreciate that, but so far, it's still pending. And this is another re-traumatization on top of losing my husband of 37 years, on top of going through the fire, the mudslide, the trauma to our entire community. There needs to be some way of addressing that kind of behavior so that we take charge of the planning department and not have these people, who have axes to grind. I don't know what she's even thinks she's going to accomplish. Anyway, I think that we need some logic and we need to be reinforcing our values and our state's values to create a community that allows a senior citizen like myself to remain in her home and not be driven out by some nasty neighbor.
Well, thank you for your comment, and I'm sorry to hear about the tragic circumstances you're having to deal with. But that said, I'm hoping that with the supervisor's office resources and perhaps with consultation with some of the planning people here tonight, you might be able to find a pathway to achieve your goal. It's a very difficult line for our planning department to walk between a valid complaint and one that you've described as vindictive, but they have the obligation to receive complaints from anybody that cares to make them and to investigate them, and I hope you understand at least that point of view. But nevertheless, to find a solution to your problem is what you're speaking to, and I'm hoping that with the resources here tonight, you'll find some aid and comfort going forward. But thank you for coming. Thank you for your comment. All right, anybody else have any comments on this portion of the agenda? If not, we'll move forward to the resilience portion. As the last speaker just mentioned, we've all felt the impact either very directly or indirectly in our immediate community from the Thomas fire and debris flow almost 2 years ago. Recognizing that, your Montecito Planning Commission has spent much of this past year and its agenda in reviewing the topic of resilience in our community, and Commissioner Donna Senauer is going to speak to that topic and fill all of you in on some of the things that we've been doing and some of the things that have been happening in our community to make it more resilient. Commissioner Senauer.
Thank you. Would Ms. Harris like to proceed before I do about it? That might be more timely, and then I would basically follow. What would your preference be?
So Chair Newman, Commissioner Senauer, if the chair would like, we could briefly go over the items A and B on the agenda, and then if Commissioner Senauer would like to follow through on item C, that would
I think that would
work.
be most appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
So for item A, the Planning and Development Liaisons and role. As I was mentioning earlier, if you were impacted by the Thomas Fire debris flow, you've received a case manager from our office, and their goal is to walk you through the rebuilding process, both from our office as well as with other county departments. So they're the coordination for you. They're the person that you can go to, and they will coordinate meetings and communicate with other county departments. So in order to find more information about your case manager, it's both on the Planning and Development Department website as well as readysbc.org. If you go under Rebuild and Repair, and then the first item, talk to your case manager. So this provides some information about the different case managers. It also includes the county's zoning counter, phone number, and their email. And so if you don't know who your case manager is and you're not comfortable going on the website to find your case manager, you can just call our office and we can direct you to their direct line. And then just to...
So you can hear my whisperings anyway. So on that webpage, there is that link to the interactive map. You can access that through our webpage or readysbc.org. Two great resources addressing the recovery building process in the Montecito area. If you hit that link, it takes you again to the interactive map, and all the properties that were impacted in the debris flow are listed. And in a few minutes, we're going to go over what those colors mean on the map and articulate what that shows as far as how the community is progressing in regards to the recovery and building process. And as Tess mentioned earlier, when you identify your property, you can search through either your parcel number or your address, and it'll zoom to your property. And then there will be either a yellow, green, red square on that property. You click on that, and it gives you the information that Ms. Harris is talking about. And then as you scroll down that dialog box, it'll give you that case manager. So there's different ways to get that information. Either you can call our offices, and then they can direct you to the case manager, or you can look it up here. This website, the interactive map, also provides a lot of information that you can access either on a mobile device or through the web page as far as any permit history of your property, looking at archived permits that are available that we have already scanned and uploaded to the website in regards to any permitted structures that are on the property that we have the records for. So it's a great tool and resource for you or your agents or representatives to do some homework and research either while you're working with the case manager or ahead of time to get an idea of what permits that were on the property and how we can help navigate that process. Back to you, Ms. Harris.
Just getting back to the PowerPoint. So the next thing that I want to talk about, I want to clarify first the non-conforming structure and uses item. So there is a 2-year deadline to start construction of legal non-conforming structures or uses or apply for an extension. Supervisor Williams mentioned earlier to apply for an extension if you haven't started the rebuild process. That is only if you are considered a non-conforming structure or use. And so for the properties that we thought may qualify under that, received a letter in the mail a couple weeks back indicating that they may need to apply for a time extension. In the back of the room, we have a form that you're welcome to fill out tonight, and you can just leave it for our office to take that requests the time extension. It's pretty simple to request. You just need to provide us with your name, your contact information, and the reason for your request. For example, you're still working with your insurance, or you need additional time to come up with plans or work with your architect. And then there are a couple different types. So non-conforming structures and non-conforming uses are a little bit different. But generally, if you have a non-conforming structure, you would get a time extension of approximately 2 years. It may apply to some members of the public in this room, and so if you have specific questions, feel free to come up and ask after the meeting, and I'm happy to discuss your project with you. And so at this point, I think it would be good to go to item C, the resilience report. So I'll turn it over to Commissioner Senauer.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. I would just like to start with the meetings we've had this year, asking various special districts to come before us, as well as different agencies and departments, to basically inform us, as well as you, the community, as to their process and how they have basically worked to address resiliency. I'd like to give you some dates. Again, all of our meetings are archived, and I really urge you to go to the website and to go through, as Ms. Harris showed, the ability for you to basically see our meetings. 9 o'clock on Wednesday mornings once a month is difficult. So please, put it on your calendar. Get a projection report so you perhaps know a couple months in advance what we're going to be discussing. But in general, we have, as far as a category on our agenda, resiliency and an update on Thomas Fire and debris flow. So that's a standard component on our agenda. So that's of import to know. On May 15, 2019, we invited the Montecito Water District and the Montecito Sanitary District to give presentations. So I urge you to be informed of their process as they dealt with all the complexities of the debris flow and fire. They are separate special districts, as you know, and they each come with their own plan and process for going forward. So they were very informative. And on July 17th, Southern California Edison, Montecito Fire Protection District, and Cox Cable came before us. And there was a myriad of presentations, PowerPoints, etc., that are available for your review. Southern California Edison, of course, talked about PSPS, the power safety, power shutoff. And Montecito Association has also had them before. The community has been very informed as to process on this. So that was July 17th. And October 16th, of this year, we had the Office of Emergency Management and the County Executive Office come before us. So we basically serve as a public servant to you all. We want to embrace, and it is a mandate to embrace the public trust and to go forward with sustainable land use management in every way, shape, or form. And we are here, and we are responsible to you to be informed by these agencies, by our special districts, to basically apprise you and apprise us of how they are getting through this, and both presently and for future. So that's important. So please visit our website. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sennell. So those of you who are here and watching, I think it's important as we're going to transition next to report to you on what is the status of rebuilding our community that was damaged so severely by the Montecito debris flow and by the fire. So we have a report from staff. We received this report at every one of our meetings, and we're pleased to share its format, its contents, and what I think are the positive results of the efforts in our community. So let's next go to the rebuild report, please.
So to start out, this is our safety inspection report that we generate, and it shows the comparison of the initial safety assessment as well as the current status of that same structure. And you'll be able to see this information graphically on the next slide. So we're looking at red placards, yellow placards, and green placards. So the pie chart on the left represents the number of structures that were initially tagged as red and yellow during the safety inspections that were done immediately following the debris flow. The pie chart on the right shows the current safety inspection status for those initial inspections. And since the original safety inspections, there's been a 41% reduction in structures that were red tagged and a 12% reduction in structures that were yellow tagged. And then 53% of structures are now green tagged. So you can see a number of structures moved from red to yellow, red to green, and so we're moving in the right direction. Then I'll turn it over to Willow, who will talk about the rebuilding permits.
Since the January 9th debris flow, 73 applications for planning permits for debris flow reconstruction were submitted. There were a total of 63 applications.
Closer.
Oh,
Get a little closer to the mic, please.
That good? Okay. There were a total of 63 applications for like exemptions, 45 of which have been issued as of December 9th, 2019. There were also 2 applications for land use permits and 8 applications for coastal development permits. And then as far as building permits, 110 were applied for and 97 of which were issued. And in addition to the building permits, there were 182 counter permits that have been applied for and issued over the counter. And this slide just shows the trend in planning and building permits applied for and issued for properties affected by the January 9th debris flow. So this spans from February of 2019 to December of 2019. So the graph on the left shows planning permits, and so in February 42% of the permits applied for were issued, and by December there have been 71% issued. And then the graph on the right shows the trend for building permits, which has also gradually increased. So 90 permit applications were submitted by February, and then there have been about 2 each month until December. And then over-the-counter permits didn't really change. There were about 4 submitted from February to December of this year.
So this next slide provides a disaster case status summary. So there are about 524 parcels affected by the debris flow and Thomas Fire, and from those, the county was able to contact 460 property owners or their representatives. Many of the properties that have been affected have finished repairs, with 59% of those properties not requiring any more work. 18.5% of the cases are currently inactive, and planning and development staff are working with owners of the other approximately 10 to 11% to help them rebuild. And then these are the cases that the Montecito Planning Commission has reviewed between January 2018 to present. There are a number of different items. And then this is a list of cases reviewed by the Montecito Planning Commission since January 2018. There were 9 planners assigned to these cases, and a number of cases have been assigned to each planner. And then this slide shows you kind of an overview of our permit process. It illustrates the permitting path for structures that were damaged or destroyed. So there's a little bit different permitting path depending on whether you want to rebuild your structure the same that it was previously, or if you'd like to make changes to your structure. Depending on that, you may be exempt from permitting. You may not need to go through Montecito Board of Architectural Review, or you may need to go to Montecito Board of Architectural Review or get a land use permit or coastal development permit. So again, work with your case manager to figure out the exact permitting process for your particular structure to rebuild. And then this permit process flow chart can also be found on readysbc.org. So that concludes our rebuild report. If you have any questions, certainly let us know.
All right. So let's go to public comment and any questions on this portion of the meeting that we've just completed on the resilience report and the rebuild report. Any public comment or question? All right. Seeing none, let's then go to our next topic on the agenda, item 9. Community resiliency through preparedness, and this is going to be presented by the Assistant CEO of our county, Matt Pontus. Matt, thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I guess it's evening now, and thank you for having me here tonight. I'm actually subbing in for our OEM Director, Kelly Hubbard, who is was just working with a team of scientists and professionals on the cave fire tonight. So she was unable to make it, but wanted to extend her thanks for the invitation. And anytime she gets a chance to talk about emergency preparedness and resiliency, she definitely takes it. So, and thank you for our staff here tonight in their evening to come here and be part of the community. I know that they went through a lot of slides there, and there was a lot of information there, but I think one of the things we're really trying to do differently during the recovery and focusing on resiliency is to get as much information out as possible and accessible to everybody to digest it and to get to it in easy formats. There were a lot of infographics and a lot of really great charts out there that they kind of breezed through. So definitely take the opportunity to go to readysbc.org and spend a little time on each one of those diagrams. There really are some useful tools on there. And if there are things that you want to hear, that you have comments, and maybe the information is hard to interpret in certain ways, please let us know. There's not only your planning staff, if you had a home that was affected during the 1/9 debris flow, but any of the folks here can put you in touch with the right people. And if we can change any of that information to make it a little more easier to understand and read, we definitely want to do that. So we're here, and we're here together, and coming up on 2 years. And so I think that that one part of our community message is the resiliency that we've been talking about here tonight with the infrastructure and a lot of the progress on our building permits. And the other side is our emotional resiliency in here. And that's what Director Hubbard wanted me to focus on tonight. And that really is making sure that that everybody is prepared for the types of disaster that we can have here in Montecito. We're very familiar with fire and have been for many, many decades for those of us that have lived on the Central Coast. And I think we have a lot of other hazards that that we're now familiar with. And I think that part of our resiliency is being connected to your neighborhoods. And I think that there's probably not a better way to get and share information than being connected to your neighbors. we're always going to try and push out our information, whether it's a slow-moving storm that's coming in or a rapidly developing emergency in the community. And we're going to use every tool we can to let everybody know what's coming and what's happening. But sometimes, as you guys probably already well know, the information that you get from your neighbors or down at Starbucks or throughout the community is just as valuable and sometimes as timely as it is coming from your local officials here. So we want to encourage everybody to really plan as we move forward through this winter season and into next summer, to really plan as a family or as a community together. Spend a little time on your preparedness planning, on what items that you know now that you want to take and prepare in case there's an evacuation. Understand geographically where you're living in relationship to areas that typically get congested. We know in our community here in Montecito what those areas are. We just need to go around the commuting times and see some of these roads back up. And understand and where our alternate routes are in relation to those. Obviously, we've got a lot of transportation projects that are coming through in the next few years, and it's going to provide probably for extra strain within our community. But at the end of that, hopefully, it's a better condition for us and our quiet community here. So, I want to push out that part of resiliency is our community's preparedness for different types of things, and I know that we have an even closer community now than ever before, probably. And I know that everybody is working together, and we're here, the County of Santa Barbara, the First District Supervisor Doss Williams, and in this great format tonight with Montecito Planning Commission out here listening to you, and we're here from the Executive Office and from your flood control district that's represented here tonight as well, and wanting to make sure that you know we're listening. If there's information that we can help chase down, we know that our partnerships and some of our resiliency partnerships that we're working with Mr. Skeen in the audience and several of the other areas are really going well. And there's a lot of work going on, and not just the county, but a lot of our partners from the private industry and community members. So our message tonight is very simple, and it is to have a plan and to exercise your plan, to communicate to your neighbors to make sure that they have a plan, to make sure that you understand the hazards here locally. And I know that our fire chief, Kevin Taylor, and his team over at the fire district can walk you through lots of other preparedness tips. Our Ready SBC site is also set up to go through different types of preparedness lists. We also, as you are aware, have a radio station here locally that can help and will be helping in the future disseminate information. So with that, unless there's any other questions from the Commission, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Thank you. Any questions? Anybody, members of the public? All right. Thanks so much, Matt. Appreciate you coming. One of the important resources we have in our community is the Office of the First District Supervisor, Doss Williams, who was here earlier but had to leave for another commitment, and now to represent that office and share with us and those of you who are watching some additional resources and information is Lisa Valencia-Sherratt.
Thank you. Hello, Mission, Chair, staff, everyone. So I'm here to just let you know what our First District Office and Office of Supervisor Williams has been doing and what we are doing now currently to help our community recover. I am dedicated to our recovery effort. That's why I know probably most of you in here. We worked together before. Our county has 2 recovery assistants, so we work together as a small team. We support our departments, planning and development, flood control, tax assessor's office, basically any department that you have to interface with, we help them reach you or help you reach them. I think our specialty, doing constituent service, is really in outreaching to people, to individual property owners, to our families hardest hit by the disaster, as neighborhoods, to our community, our affected community, as well as building awareness in our whole community that the recovery and disaster recovery is a difficult process that can take up to 10 years or more. So just three main factors that we have found in our work that affect people's ability and pace to rebuild. We just heard the numbers. Thank you, Tess. As the first one that affects everyone, I think regardless of if their property was damaged or not, it affects everyone in different ways, but that's trauma, and that is affecting people in all ways in their life, and especially in the way that we make decisions about complex processes. So I don't know if anyone here has already been, sounds like most of you probably have engaged with the process. It's very complex, and if you were not intending to rebuild, it's really hard to figure out all these new rules and regulations and agencies and people. The next one, for financial constraints and insurance being one of the top issues, which is either being underinsured or being at risk of losing your insurance, not being renewed. And then the third area, just the changes that we see across the board as a community, in our families, in our topography, in drainage issues. So those are some of the top issues. And so what do we do? How can we help? What does this look like? Number one, we run a recovery email update list. So if you're not on that list, I would recommend it. It's a really good way to stay in touch with deadlines that are coming up from the departments. We have a sign up list in the back for those of you watching at home. You can email me at Valencia, like the oranges, or Spain, VALENCIA at countyofsb.org. We can help explain technical things and maps, new rules. We are currently working on expanding opportunities for mediation to help reduce appeals, neighbor disputes, complaints, and to avoid litigation altogether, hopefully. We can help connect you to other government offices at the state or federal level, and just we can help troubleshoot in general. Another way that we have been working is with neighborhoods. Sometimes neighborhoods have concerns, fears, or issues as a whole, and things that didn't exist before. So we have done that. We can bring in or work with our flood control, planning and development, public works, the roads division, different departments too of the county. And also, so we just made a new partnership today. What we'll be doing is with these neighborhood meetings is working with the Bucket Brigade in their resilience building programs for preparedness. I'm pointing to the back because Abe Powell is here from Bucket Brigade. So if you are interested in becoming part of this, learning what it is, basically when a neighborhood, they come to us saying, we're really concerned about this bridge, or, you know, the water's flowing down this way and it didn't flood like this before, all those kind of things. The best thing that a neighborhood can do before even coming to us is to develop leadership and be organized yourselves, and kind of goes with Matt says, to be prepared as a family and as a neighborhood, and to develop relationships with each other and just really know each other as neighbors. So there's some parts where the county, we're happy to help, but it's really a neighbor-to-neighbor interaction from the community. So we're really happy to start merging our meetings. We also work with the architects, the American Institute of Architects of Santa Barbara, volunteers. So anyway, we're here to help all the way around, and we are, it's kind of a big load, so I apologize if it takes a little longer to get back to you. But I will get back to you. And just to kind of do a different look at the stats that Tess mentioned about the rebuilding, there's good news. There's a lot of progress. For our active cases, these are properties who are actively in the rebuilding. Just in the last 2 weeks ago, we had 68 active cases, and now we have 54 active cases, which could maybe sound like not a good thing, but it's opposite. It's actually good because those 14 cases are done, so that's good. We've had We have about 66 cases that are no contact. That's home property owners who have not contacted us yet, mainly the planning and development. And of those, we are doing active individual outreach. If we have contact information for them, calling, seeing how they're doing. Just today, I reached 5 people and had good conversations. These range from 10 minutes to a half an hour or longer, because really what we're doing is checking up and seeing how people are in addition to their properties and what they need. So basically we're seeing good trends, but it's also, I think, part of our role to advocate for our community, our affected community, that it's not over and it's not something that gets over. But we're here, and I think we're really lucky to have such good staff and such great community members, and such a desire to be part of the community. So thank you.
Thank you for that. One important message is I hope we all feel, both tonight as we do throughout our days here in the community, that we are a different community now because of what's happened, and that we do have a shared responsibility to help each other. In that regard, from the point of view of planning and development, if any of you who are here or any of you who are watching either have or know somebody who has incurred damage as a result of the debris flow and have not yet been in touch with the Planning and Development Department of the county, please do so. Working through your liaison is the best resource, the best path, the best way for you to get an understanding of the process, to get help through the process, and to make it as painless as possible. So please, those of you again here and those watching, if you personally or know somebody who has not yet been in touch with their liaison, please tell them to do so. That really concludes the portion of the meeting where we wanted to share information with you. And before we adjourn, the important part of the meeting yet to be completed is where you share whatever comments, concerns, or suggestions you might have for us. We've heard from some of you throughout the meeting at various points, but now is that, so to speak, last opportunity for you to share with us any comments, any concerns, so that as we go forward with our responsibilities, as the Planning and Development Department goes forward with its responsibilities, we will be informed by what you share with us tonight. So is there anybody that would like to make any comments, has any questions or concerns? Would you come up to the podium? No? Well, hold on. We'll get a microphone to you so we can hear you. Again, if you would, please give us your name.
Holiday McManigal.
Thank you.
I heard the numbers tonight, but what I'd like to know is from homes that were 100% destroyed, how many people have gone through the permitting building process and have completed their home? Because I only know of one.
That's a staff question, so we'll turn to that table.
So we'll look into that question. I don't have the statistic with me tonight, but I'll take a look, and you can contact me, and I'll get back to you on that question.
Thank you.
Please.
My name is Craig Lewis. I'm the founder and executive director of the Clean Coalition and a resident here of Santa Barbara. Grew up here. And last night we had an event in this very auditorium talking about resilience and focused on getting renewables-driven resilience at the community level and at the individual facility level, including all the way down to the individual homes. And I think it would be, I was very touched by a lot of the challenges that people are facing in the rebuild efforts. My organization, the Clean Coalition, we've done community microgrid efforts in a lot of disaster-stricken areas, including up in Sonoma, Napa counties, from the fire damages up there, Long Island after Hurricane Sandy, and we've got a big effort here in the Santa Barbara region that's referred to as the Goleta Load Pocket Community Microgrid, because we're all served by the Lita substation, which is our only connection to the transmission system. So we're super vulnerable to the electricity system. Anyway, I would just really like to see more attention on the fact that renewables-driven resilience is a very important feature. And as we're going through these rebuilding efforts, it's the perfect opportunity to make sure that individual homes are rebuilt with renewables-driven resilience, and every other facility is also paying attention to that and bringing this type of resilience to the community. Thank you.
Just as a response, I think I'm the only architect member of the Planning Commission, but I can tell you, your state government, which I'm kind of an ex-New Yorker, now a happy Californian for the last 16 years. I think your state government is moving in ways that are extraordinary on a national level. The new 2019 building code that will go into effect, it has to be the most aggressive step forward in preventing climate change in the country. And generally speaking, as you've probably heard many of us grouse about Title 24 and what that means in the Energy Code. Almost historically, 5 years after California adopts a code, the rest of the country starts to get on board. Our aggressiveness in this case is one exceptional. And the sad part is we don't really have a problem here in California in adopting sane and rational policies. And I can only tell you that other than serving your community in some way by volunteering, the only other thing I would really like to tell everybody tonight is vote. Vote and take 10 people to the polls with you. Because if we're going to save this planet, it's by adopting these kinds of laws. We've done many projects where we have tried to push forward different kinds of microgrid solutions, fuel cells. We have the tools to do what we need to do. We just need to make sure that our government actually responds. And it's not a problem on a state government level. So I can only tell you, vote twice, maybe 3 times if you can.
If I could just follow on to that, one distinct suggestion I would make for the county. You've got some wonderful information on your website, and that was very impressive. But one of the things that a lot of people don't understand is that when they put a diesel generator in, they basically have a 2-day fuel supply. So you've basically kept your lights on for 2 days, and then you are lights out. If you go with a natural gas generator, you basically are going to be lights out as soon as the natural gas pipeline goes down. And when the natural gas pipeline goes down, it goes down for months at a time, potentially, not a couple of days. So for true resilience, it's a renewables-driven solution, solar plus energy storage in this area, and having a web landing page that talks about the different options. Santa Barbara has a lot of local solar developers that also do energy storage and can bring this kind of resilience. This room was full of those people last night. And just having a web page where people can get easy access to some basic information, and then have some references to some of the parties that can actually build this out for them as they rebuild or renovate their homes, or they just want to get resilience. Maybe their home didn't get damaged, but they just want resilience. Yeah,
I would want to recommend one more thing for anybody who needs to rebuild, whether it's as a result of the debris flow and working on your home or your next project. The USGBC, the United States Green Building Council, is a great resource. There are many, many, many things that we are capable of doing in terms of helping achieve the kind of climate goals that we want. And microgridding is one. There's a long list, and I think it's worthwhile for people who are about to embark on a project to kind of look into that and see what are the things that we can all do in our individual projects to turn our buildings into something that is newly extraordinary.
And just to add a footnote to this discussion, Commissioner Senauer wants to mention something about the Community Choice Project.
Yes, regarding renewables. The county, as I understand, is now part of Community Choice Aggregate for renewables. It is the Monterey Bay Community Power Community Choice. And this is Supervisor Williams is part of the board, I believe. And I do believe this is a step forward going to renewables, and it's of great import. Also with building, I believe there's a solar, is there not, with permitting in 2020, a solar requirement for new housing or not?
I think the housing requirement is somewhat less restrictive in the 2019 code. I'm sure you guys are so queued up. You know, the building department is getting flooded with applications because everybody wants to get filed before the 2019 goes into effect in January. But, you know, just to kind of put a benchmark on the kind of things that are going to come in the next generation of the building code, any building less than 3 stories tall, I don't believe this affects all housing, will be net zero by law.
Right.
This is a major change in how we deal with our construction industry, you know, and what goes, and even on our professional side. No one's ready to do this yet here in California. This is a kind of like, it really is an exceptional challenge that government has put in front of us. And I can only tell you from my vantage point and from the vantage point of, I think, what I can speak for the American Institute of Architects, it's game on. We're ready. We want to be ready for this.
All right, are there any other public comments or questions?
Yes.
Please.
My name is Peter Van Dynwick. I've lived here 48 years, and I found this evening very gratifying. Here we have Montecito's future, county planning, first district supervisor, Montecito Planning Commission, Montecito Board of Architecture Review somewhere, and of course the Montecito Association, of which I'm an active member. It reminded me recently when I returned from a trip out of county that we really live in a remarkable place, unique, but fortunately in several ways too unique. We've gone through some terrible disasters, and it kind of underlined in my thinking that we really should always, always look ahead and recommit to the reason we are who we are, and that is, as it says on the second page of the Montecito Community Plan, to preserve, protect, and enhance the semi-rural character of our Montecito neighborhoods, something we should never forget as we move ahead with all of our responsibilities. So best of luck to you. Thank you very much for never forgetting. And we'll see how it goes. We have a lot to go, don't we? Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. And if there's no more public comment, let me first express our appreciation to those of you who took the time to come tonight, those of you who are taking the time to watch our presentation, and also heartfelt thanks to our staff. This was not an easy thing to pull off. It was new. It's never been done, but we did it, and they did it, and we could not have done it without them. So thanks to all of you, and thank you to staff, and we are adjourned.